Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Christian School Management. Glad to have you with us this afternoon. My name's Simon Jeans. I'm the Executive Director, and Dan is going to be making the presentation around VCC, the new service that we're offering schools. Just a little background, CSM is a nonprofit, began in 2017 to work exclusively with Christian schools and came to be largely because so many Christian schools were going out of business, and we were just angry that that was happening.
Mhm.
So we started CSM to see if we could assist in the industry, and that's what we've been doing since 2017. So we're trying to find ways in which to come alongside Christian schools in order to make their operations more effective, more stable, sustainable, and our intention is always independence, not codependence. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan now and let him rip.
Thank you, Simon. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you all. We are going to be recording again, as is usually the case. We have about 20 registrations, so I'm happy you guys are here. So I'm not talking just to a robot to record me. So that's very nice to have some interaction with y'all. I appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can begin the presentation. And oh, actually, I did that wrong. I don't know why I never do that. Let me share my screen first and then click on the presentation. So here we go. All right, now we're golden. Now we're good. Okay. So the topic again, yes, as Simon introduced, is vocation, college, and career counseling. And just to give you a little background on the title, we started out when Simon and I had this conversation. It's really been kind of a couple of years in the making. It was college, career, and calling. And we changed the title. Simon's wisdom came into play there as we spoke about vocation, because we really want, calling is a term that I think sometimes can be misconstrued. And so we wanted to be able to be placed in the context of it's about the work that we do and the work that we feel that God is leading us to, preparing us to, has given us the gifts and the talents to be successful. And so you'll see shortly, we'll talk about the context of each of those. But we certainly, as Christian schools, right, want to be focusing on not just one path to success. And so the traditional path is college, but we're going to talk about how it's important that we work with students to help them find what that path is where God is leading them. And that includes the possibility of a vocation or simply a career service, et cetera. And so we're going to talk about those ideas. That is the nature of what it is that we are going to be doing with our VCC program. Just a quick little background to myself. I heard Marcel talking a little about where he's been, and started having flashbacks because I also have been about 33 years an educator, public, charter, and private Christian. In that time, served roles from majority of the time as a principal, also as a director, spent a little time as a superintendent as well. At one point, I was blessed to be principal of a school in New Jersey, where our school had actually attained the rank of the #1 high school in the United States from U.S. News and World Report. And that was really exciting. That and about $8 gets me a coffee at Starbucks. So, but it's just a nice thing to be able to speak to, because I have had some success in my career, and part of that is that nature of getting to know kids and getting to know what their aspirations are and helping them achieve that and attain that. And so for the last 7 years, I've been in the college advising lane, working both privately and with schools on that idea. And the idea here was formulated around really wanting to help smaller Christian schools who have the desire, but not the budget or the manpower to provide necessarily an individual to serve in this role. I know that twice where I served as a director, this was one of about 7 hats that I wore. And so in that, it becomes I don't want to say it doesn't become a burden, but it becomes something you wish you could spend more time on and do more with. And so Simon and I talked about that and said, well, we should be able to provide a service like this for our schools, where you don't need a full-time person to come in and do the job, but someone who can come alongside of you in your mission and do the work. So that's why we're going to talk about the particular question about starts with this, right? It starts with the idea of what do you want to be when you grow up, right? And is a question that many of us, I guess I could say many of us are still answering, right? That question, we're just never quite sure that I've landed where I'm going to be for the rest of my professional career. So it's an idea that we know that there's many avenues, right? So there's the traditional college avenue, right, where we spend 2 years for an associate's degree, 4 years for an undergraduate, 7 or more for a master's level, doctoral level degree. So college is kind of what everybody knows, right? But then we also know that there are those who are just really good with their hands, like getting dirty. In fact, they can't even perceive an idea of how a future of just learning is involved. They have to be active. They have to be engaged. And so trade becomes an option for students like that. And thank God for that, right? Because there's so many people we know that don't have college degrees, but are skilled tradesmen. And when I need a plumber or an electrician or someone that needs to understand the lane that they work, I know I'm grateful that we have people who pursue that as opposed to a traditional degree. Then there's those who are just big thinkers, right? They love new ideas. They love starting businesses, maybe having crazy out there thoughts and then wanting to wrap that around and create a business or a lifestyle around that. So we have entrepreneurs, right? Entrepreneurs are also, especially in this generation, are becoming more and more a popular option. And so preparing students perhaps to become entrepreneurs is another option. We always talk about, of course, service being mission work, potentially being military. And there are many who are not only kind of built for that, certainly born for that, but for many, it becomes an avenue to whatever's coming next. But it starts with the idea of giving up yourself to serve others. And that leads potentially to a career or a direction. And then, of course, we have ultimately careers that we land in. Sometimes we land in them and we stay in them. Sometimes we move from career to career, never quite satisfied where we ended up. There is a statistic that talks about the average number of times someone changes jobs in their lifetime. In 2019, that statistic was about 12 times. That was the statistic. Said 12 times is the average time that number of times it's that an average person changes careers. And what's interesting, I think, is an even greater statistic than that, more impactful statistic than that, is that in 2021, there was a study that said that only 27% of college graduates are working in a field that's related to their degree. 27%, that's 1 in every 4, right? So we know that this question of what do you want to be when you grow up is critical. And so we can go into post-secondary, post-high school life not having a clue and liking that, I guess, feeling like I'll just figure it out, right? But we as educators have a responsibility, right, to help guide and set students on the right direction, on the right path. So when we talk about this, we want to talk about the idea of, as students move from their freshman or senior year, right? There's a greatness of anxiety, an increase in anxiety. You know, it's like you coast for a while and then all of a sudden becomes like, gosh, at some point, I guess I really need to start thinking about this. And then the next thing you know, it's like, I have to make that decision right now. I have to figure this out. So that whole time frame from 9th to 12th grade it all matters. And we're going to talk about that in a little while. We can't wait until junior year to start asking these questions. And when you're the only one running the show, sometimes that's the only time you can squeeze it in is for the junior class, or maybe even just the senior class to help them with their applications. So the idea again is we know this is a process. Parents don't always know what they don't know. Many of them have not gone through the path and the experience. So they need guidance. They need help. And if the school isn't providing it, then oftentimes they don't know where to go to get the help. They don't know where to find it. And we understand that it's natural. The anxiety is natural because kids can't think about that question what I'm going to do with my life. It's too big a question, right? They have a hard enough time figuring out what they're going to eat for lunch, right? Let alone what they're going to do with the rest of their life. So and there's statistics that talk about that, right? That's like 10,000 decisions a day that they're making, as they navigate life. So again, as educators, right, it's our responsibility to come alongside them and to guide them. And we also know very clearly, right, there is not one path for everyone. There is not one way that works for everyone. No cookie cutter, no template that says just follow this and you'll be fine. So in order for us to recognize that, we have to be able to know them, right? We have to get to know them on a personal level and understand what their strengths are, understand what motivates them, where their passions lie. And so that is a part of the process. And so the other piece to consider is we're always thinking not just about what's now, but what's next. And the idea that there's so much change constantly. And if I'm thinking necessarily that what I'm choosing to do now is going to be relevant in 5 years, 10 years, we're mistaking ourselves. And we know that. But we know that as adults because we've experienced it. But high school students don't necessarily understand that. So we have to help them begin to plan not only for what's in the immediate future, but what's the path down the road. And we also know how much time this takes, how strenuous this is. I know that with my personal clients that I work with, I'll often talk to a parent and a student up front, and the recognition is that the reason that they have a counselor or an advisor is to save the relationship between parent and child, because that just gets to become very confrontational. And the support of an outsider coming in, who, by the way, may say the same exact thing that mom and dad say, right? The fact that it's someone else makes it meaningful, makes it relevant. And so the school and a school representative provides that opportunity to do that. And so what we do, right, our purpose is to help make that transition more manageable and less anonymous. We want the parent to understand what's going on, to be actually engaged in it with us as we go through the process. So we have specific objectives with the VCC program. Number one, first and foremost, right, is that we want to make sure that every student has thought about where God is leading them, not just what's going to make them the most money, not just what's going to bring them fame and fortune, but where's God leading them? And that involves, again, understanding your passions, your talents, your gifts, and wanting them then to utilize that and then talk about the preparation. It's not just talent alone that's going to get you to the next level and be successful, right? God has given you certain gifts. Now you have to cultivate them, train them, and continue to learn and grow. So that's part of the process. So that's something that we aim to do. We want to make sure parents know that they are well cared for, that we are not simply saying when it's time for an application, come and see me and I'll help you with that, but actually helping guide them through the process. That's so critical that we are, as a school, right, there's an expectation that we're going to be providing some of that counsel for our students. And so we want to also keep in mind that not only is that an assurance to parents, but it's a great recruitment and retention strength to be able to tell parents that we've got your back on this. We've got you covered. It's individualized. It is something that you don't have to be responsible for outside. We have not only someone who's going to be able to work with you in small groups and large instruction, but also in a one-on-one relationship, communication, consultation directly with your child in the process. And Marcel, you were talking about the smaller school that you have. I know Christina, the school that you're in, is still in the process of trying to build that high school community. And so this is one of those ways in which you can't do it all. And CSM wants to be able to come alongside you and provide an opportunity to help you. And again, an important point to make, and I'll make this probably again, our goal is not to be on your payroll and your budget, right, year after year after year. Our goal is to help you get over that hump. You know it's important. You might have somebody that you think, I think they know what to do, but boy, it would be great if they could kind of shadow walk alongside an expert in this and then take the baton and run with it from there. That's our goal. When we may lay out the program later to give you an idea about how we roll this out, the thought is really that there's like an introductory period, like a year zero, and then a year of modeling what this looks like. And then after that year, you have a handbook that you'll be able to use. You have a staff member who has now walked through this and says, I got this. And then CSM is there to serve as an advisory from a distance, but then it's your program to take it from there. So again, want to make sure you're clear on that. This is not, again, adding someone to your personnel percentage, right, in your budget. This is simply a stepping stone, a bridge to you being able to manage this on your own. So when we, again, talk about the three, let's make sure we're clear about the difference, right? The vocation is where we're talking about that conversation inside about what's God called me to do, right? What am I inspired by? What am I motivated by, drawn to, led to? What's that vision I can't get out of my head, and I've had it in there since I was a child, right? What is that? How can we cultivate that in a way that is going to align with what I want, but also what God wants? And so that's the vocational component of it. And then we talk about college, which is not a one size fits all in itself. College has its traditional path, but it also has very different lanes in which students can earn dual credits while they're in high school. They can do internships. They can get credits transferred. They can do the community college path for 2 years. That rolls right into a college education, a bachelor's degree program. There's 7-year master's programs and doctoral programs. There's so many options out there. I mean, honestly, there's many parents that I talk to, that I deal with, that are lost themselves, and they've been through the process, but it's been a while. So we're always staying current on that. We're trying to make sure that we always know we are, your content experts. We want to be sure that we're right out in front of that. So when you have a question, we have an answer, or we can point you to a resource that's going to help you discern that for yourself, and just have a parent or a student help discern that for themselves. And then, of course, the career option, right? 7 distinct careers. Some of those 12 we were talking about before may be variations within a career, but 7 distinct careers in their lives. I mean, that's a lot of change. And so we have to begin to prepare students for that idea again of what you are thinking now, but also how does this impact what I may want to be doing in 10 years or 20 years down the road, or honestly, what I may want to be doing after I retire from my first career, because my passion I've always been drawn to that fire in my belly about this area. And that would be something that I'm also preparing for down the road as a second career. So we're always thinking not just short-term, but long-term as we talk about career. So what we do, right? We have this program is meant to support your mission, right? Again, let's be very clear about that. We are in alignment with you. We are not coming in as some third party with a template that we just lay in front of you and said, here's what we're going to do. We are going to partner with you in this. So one of the ways we do that is guiding by faith, right? We embrace Christian principles. That's why VCC is part of CSM. We want to be sure that we're aligning those career choices with their faith and with their values, which align also with your approach to education. So that is first and foremost in our approach. We also have a tailored career exploration. We want to make sure that we are understanding that what God has planned for you is not the same as what God has planned for them. And you might be sitting next to each other. You might have taken the same exact path through high school. But that still doesn't mean that where God is going to have you serve is going to be the same as the person next to you. It's got to be tailored to you. What is it that you just have discovered about yourself? And we have resources to help them figure that out, that we would bring to the table as part of that process. And then there's, of course, the strategic college planning. We know a good majority of our students are going to go to college. And so we want to make sure that they understand the process of applications, the essays that are involved, the process of getting teacher recommendations, the process of even searching for schools and finding where those resources are. That's all a very important part. And we have to be mindful as well, right, that it's not just about their academic interests, but we want to make sure that they are in an environment where they are encouraged and their spiritual growth is nurtured, that there are opportunities for them. They don't have to abandon or shed their values simply because they are moving to a university. We want to be sure that they have an opportunity to see that I can do both. I can pursue academics, but I can also continue to not only pursue my own faith, but to witness to others and be a salt and light in the environment where God has placed me. And then again, discovering a calling, right? That idea, finding their true calling, right? Not the whatever inspires them at the moment, the latest TikTok trend, right? It's not about that. It's about really digging deep and understanding where are those seeds that God has been planting throughout my entire life. And I know it because every time I tried to turn away from it, right, he put me in the belly of the whale and spit me right back where he wanted me to be all along. So that's another piece of it, is helping to discover that calling. Partnering with parents is very important. You know that as Christian schools, and I'm sure that you are engaged in conversation with your parents on a regular basis. But we actually want them to be fully engaged in this process. It's not just about understanding what we're doing, but having them be part of it where they can ask questions and they can have some small little kind of subgroups themselves where they are getting instruction on how do I go about this as a parent? What do I need to do? What's a FAFSA, right? How do I do that? Where do I find out about financial aid, and how do I explore this or explore that? So we want parents to be very much engaged in the process directly. And then once again, the notion of a strategic advantage. I mean, this is something really special, right? Now, again, we have even here on the call, we have a large school, we have some smaller schools, some starting schools, some established schools. The idea of this program is whether parents know it or not, right? This is a huge component of a high school education. And so if you as a smaller school are saying, what is that one thing that we do that maybe nobody else does? A program like this would be a marketing point to be able to talk about the fact that you have an individualized approach for students to help them on that path to vocation, college, and career that they're going to be engaged in and be part of. There's no question that is an appeal to parents, and the ability to present that could be something that serves as an advantage for you in your marketing. So to lay out just a sample, like an example of how a calendar might look, I call it year 1 and year 2, but it's really more like a year 0 and a year 1, because the first 2 elements on there are really the preparation, the lead-in time. So we would be developing a handbook, which again, the purpose of the handbook would be that becomes something that's yours. We're putting your logo on the cover page and you're owning it for long after CSM is no longer in the picture, right? But we are helping you develop that with a focus on all 4 years of high school. And as an option, you could even talk about what's going to happen in 7th and 8th grade to begin to plant the seeds for what would happen in high school. So that's where it starts. And then we'd also have, as part of that, a 30-minute introduction for every grade, every student, all parents. Again, an invitation to come. It doesn't mean that they're required, but it would be a great way for them to at least get an understanding of here's what's coming next year. And here's the plan for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and how we're going to come alongside of you. That could be done in person also. Depending on where you are, it's sometimes more impactful to have somebody there speaking live. One of the models that I've used in schools is I've come out for 2 days, and in the first day, I do a student presentation, and then I do small group breakouts with the certain grade levels. There's kind of a first come, first serve opportunity to speak to highly motivated students who are already kind of on the path, juniors and seniors, and give them about 30 minutes of kind of free advice, if you will, on here's what I'm thinking, and here's some things you need to consider moving forward. And then the evening, a parent presentation, and then the second day, some more small group and more individual opportunities. That may be something you're looking to do. But it also can be done remotely. But the idea is in that year 0, there would be an introduction and kind of a laying of the foundation. And then over the course of the year, we have carefully constructed a model for the year that, as you can see, as you look through that, it involves every grade level from freshman to senior. It involves small group conversations as well as individual sessions with seniors and juniors at some point at different points during the year. It also involves parents at certain levels at certain times. Now, this is customizable depending on the needs of your school. But again, this is carefully constructed after years of being at a secondary level. And again, over the last 7 years, working specifically in an advising lane, the timing is very important. I mean, we all know our seniors get priority at the start of the year. I mean, that's just the way it is. But we can't ignore everyone else. And so we begin to look at how does this all fit? This is how this was constructed with that in mind. Okay. And then what do we cover in general? So in general, these are the topics that we would cover, right? There's this ongoing discussion every year about academics. Every year we would be talking about what am I taking now? What am I thinking about? I need to take next year. Am I thinking as a rising sophomore about academics in my senior year? And so the question becomes, well, what do you want to pursue? And if you want to pursue this particular major, then yes, we need to begin thinking about the pathway to show your demonstrated interest in that area. And so while you may not have thought at all about taking statistics, it might be the course you need to take to show that you have an interest and to provide some greater background and greater, if you will, skill in that area to make yourself more marketable, right? So those are the ongoing pieces. In particular, we also talk about summer enrichment. There's nothing more painful to me when I'm starting work with an individual client that they're in the spring of their junior year and they're just starting this conversation and they realize, if only I had started talking about this in my freshman year, I wouldn't have lost 2 summers, right? 2 summers where I could have been doing an internship. I could have been working. I could have been pursuing a summer program. I could have been opportunities that they don't know that they need. So again, part of the conversation that's ongoing at every grade level is what can they be doing outside of the school structure to ensure that their portfolio is complete. And then, as you can see, just outlining some of the different topics during the years, right? What's the most important topics to cover in a freshman year conversation, right? They're not really mature yet. They're not really clear on their path. I mean, there's always the exception, right? But generally, our focus in freshman year is helping them transition to high school and be successful in high school. They're not ready yet to start thinking about college, but we can be planting the seeds and getting their feet firmly on the ground. And then sophomore years where we start talking about career exploration. We start using some of the resources to help them think about something they probably haven't thought about yet. And we begin talking about getting to colleges, getting on site and visiting and beginning to develop relationships where you know you're going to get strong letters of recommendation. And so you have to build a strong connection there. And then junior year, we start moving into finding major and matching those majors with careers and colleges. And then we start talking more about testing, SAT, ACT, what's required, what do you need to do, how do you make sure that you are well prepared for those areas. And we really hone in on that idea about internships or research positions or mentorship experiences, working experiences, because they're a year away, right, from taking that step into the adulthood, if you will, and those skills that they develop, that resiliency, that conflict management, team working cooperatively, are all skills that they're learning them in school, but to actually put them in application in kind of real world context is critical. And they're ready for that by their junior year. And so that's where we begin to talk about that. And then, of course, senior year, the biggest priority is applications, making sure that everything is done right, essay support, preparing them for interviews, scholarships, financial aid, and then eventually making the decision about what it is, in fact, that they're choosing. So while this generally is an overview for students who are pursuing that college track, as we're moving through the process, they're also honing in their idea of what they want to pursue. So if they're thinking trade instead, there's some different conversations. If they're thinking military path, I've been recently having a conversation with a young man, and we're talking about the ASFAB, and we're talking about making a connection with a recruiter, and we're talking about what are the skills that are necessary for you to be viewed in a certain way by a recruiter. So it's same conversations, just different context. And so it's important, again, that once we identify the student's strengths, the student's passions, the student's interests, we start tailoring the conversations in that direction. So some of the resources that we use, which is not all of them exclusively, but it is the primary ones that we'll use. We use a program called SCORE. Now, if you're not familiar with SCORE, I recommend that you just visit that website, SCORE, SCOIR. Don't ask me why they spell it that way, but that's how they spell it. Score.com is a kind of a one-stop shop for so many of the resources, career searches, college searches. You can complete your entire application and all the processes, the transcripts, all through SCORE. It becomes kind of your hub. We build the cost of SCORE into the fee, and it's ridiculously inexpensive. You may have heard of other programs. One's called Naviance. Naviance is great, but it's very expensive. So SCORE is another great option to look at, and that's where we are always being cost mindful for our CSM schools. So SCORE is the resource that we go with. We also, of course, we focus on Common App. For many smaller schools, this is everything you do is through Common App. The challenge with Common App is the replication where you're doing things repetitively, where in SCORE, you're actually able to kind of do it all in one place and then simply click a couple of buttons and off the application goes to all the different schools they're applying to. So SCORE kind of simplifies the Common App process. It also, SCORE kind of absorbed something that used to be called the Coalition App. They now are the Coalition App. So depending on how a school requires their application, those are the two resources. Then you're all familiar with College Board, but College Board also has a whole nother side that many people don't know about with their Big Future site. And the Big Future side is all about the preparation. It's, again, another place to do college searches and career searches and get resources that will guide you through the process. And last but not least is a focus for us is resources that actually focus on Christian colleges. Because we know that not every Christian college is the same. We know that not every Christian college is necessarily Christian. And so as we begin to have those conversations, we want to be able to put a resource out there for parents so that they can explore specifically the faith-based lane of secondary education and, again, have a place to go to get that information that will give them, that'll answer the questions that Common App won't, that College Board won't, because it specifically focuses on faith-based Christian education. Okay, so again, what are our outcomes? The idea of what we do with VCC is we develop that handbook with you, right? Partnering with you, that becomes the outline, and it's yours. After that, it becomes the guiding, document for you that you modify, you update as time goes by, but that handbook becomes yours. The program, the implemented program, 9 through 12, biblically grounded. Again, it can include 7th and 8th grade. That's up to you. It depends on when you want to get this conversation started. The multi-layered approach, right? Again, that focuses on calling, sees college as one way, but not the only way to a career. But it really comes down to, I love the way that we've worded that last piece, right? The satisfaction of a life well lived. We often talk about, as Christian schools, when we market, are we marketing the percentage of our students that go to college, right? Are we marketing the percentage of our kids that go to top 10 colleges, right? Or are we marketing students that are aligned with their calling, right? That they are pursuing whatever it is that God's called them to do and doing that successfully. And so we want to be sure that we're aligned with your mission in that it is not just about necessarily the college outcomes, but about the outcomes that are right for that student, because that's what God has prepared them for, both in terms of knowledge and skill and passion and inspiration. We also recognize that there will be a deep level of parent satisfaction because, again, of the individual connection with this program. It is, again, a great piece for you for marketing, to be able to talk to your parents about what you do in this lane. And students as well are grateful for the process because they are attended to. And we even talk about large public high schools. They all have counselors, but they're sometimes on a 250-to-1 ratio, right? And so finding the time is completely dependent on the kid scheduling an appointment. And if you have a kid who's not really all that motivated to go to college to begin with, they tend to fall through the cracks. And I say that after 25 years of secondary high school experience in a public level. It's not because they don't want to. It's simply because it's just too great a task. And so the students appreciate that, along with the parents, and we engage the teachers in the process as well. It's important for them to feel like they are contributing to the success of the students in helping them identify the paths, supporting them with the resources, and whatever other way the teachers may be engaged. We want teachers to be part of the process as well. So as an example of what the structure would be, again, being mindful that the goal is really kind of one and done, right? That the goal is we come in, we help you transition, and then you take over from there. The example that we provide, I'm going to have Simon discuss because of the way that CSM structures its fees. I want the master to kind of walk you through that so that you can understand how this is just one example, but it will be different, obviously, depending on your particular situation. So Simon, go ahead.
CSM always has desired to meet Christian schools, particularly those who have a much lower tuition than those who are charging $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. We have no objection to those schools. It's just that our schools tend to be in the $5,000 to $15,000 range. And so we charge according to the tuition of the school as a ratio. So when you're looking at the example here and you see year one handbook, it says 0.25, that's 0.25 of your average K-12 tuition. So we think about it in regards to how much you're charging your families. And so every school in that sense pays the same amount proportionally. So over the course of year 0 or year 1 and year 1 or year 2, depending how you think about it, we're looking at a 2.5 tuition in order to deliver this project according to the way that Dan's laid it out. And again, as Dan has said, it certainly is entirely customizable, except for the central pillars of it. We're not going to work with you unless we work with a handbook that can become part of the whole process. We will engage with parents, and obviously we want to ensure that there's an individualized component to it. So with those three things in mind, it's highly customizable.
Thank you, Simon. Just trying to answer some of the questions in the chat. Appreciate some of the questions that you're asking. So just in case there was a question, yes, we will be sending out the PowerPoint slides and the recording afterwards. And yes, a great question, Marcel, and I'll have to have a conversation with my Canadian partner to ensure that if there are resources that are unique to Canada, outside of the resources that I already have discussed, then we'll make sure that we are inclusive of that as well. So I thank you for bringing that to my attention. I hadn't even thought. I do know that some of those certainly carry over. I know that Common App is used by a certain number of Canadian schools, but I don't know that they all utilize Common App. So I'll investigate that further. Thank you.
So Dan, I can add something to that. So Marcel, for Canadian schools, it depends very much whether the student is applying to a Canadian university. And as you know, that's a very, very simple process through UAC. And that's straightforward. If they're applying to an American university, particularly a Christian university, then obviously the process is very different. And if your students are applying strictly to Canadian universities, then again we would moderate the process so that we would focus on vocation and then options, which include university, careers, colleges, trades, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. So thank you. So that's great. I appreciate that, Simon, that insight. So we'll definitely have to have an addendum in some way to make sure that's inclusive in there. So I appreciate you mentioning that. So again, some of the things that we just want to put out there as additional considerations, right? Again, we've talked about the fact that it's fully customizable. We recognize that you might be focused on, hey, right now I just want to concentrate on my juniors and seniors. It might be the opposite. You might feel like you have what you need in place for your juniors and seniors, but you really need some attention to your freshmen and sophomores and just introducing, or you may be like, hey, I need somebody to talk to my parents, right? We've got everything else covered. So it really is a conversation that we are willing to have. We have laid out what we believe to be the most comprehensive program, but that does not mean that we are not able to fit the package to your needs. So we'll be very
Dan,
clear.
I'm sorry for interrupting. It could be also that it's a introduction year by year, so it's a 4-year partnership, and at the end of 4 years, you're independent with us as a coach if you're interested, but not necessary. And so it's a graded introduction where we start with freshmen or we start with 7th grade and move the process through year by year.
Right. Yes. Thank you. Especially if you're building a high school, right? I mean, that's a very important concept to the idea of, we're ready now for freshmen, but we're not ready for seniors yet. We don't have seniors yet. So that's definitely a great addition. The on-site training support is available. That's another option in the sense that, again, while it's intended to be done remotely because you're all over the country and in other countries, God bless Zoom, right? In the sense that we came out of a horrific time period with some real great technology and advantages in how we do training and how we do support. So we're able to do everything we do remotely. But if you wanted that option I spoke of earlier of coming in and being there in person, that option is something that can be talked about because it is something certainly that we recognize the value in that. Again, options for continued support. This goes back to that idea of, hey, if you feel like you have someone who you want to turn into this role, that you want to eventually move into this role, but they're just not quite ready yet, and maybe for a year they just need to walk alongside someone, that's an option. Again, there's other options too for the way in which that this can be done. So just want to make sure that you understand again that it's fully customizable in that way, in how you want to roll out the program. All right. Again, something else to mention that I had not talked about before, but certainly can put out there now. You may find at the end or towards the senior year that you have parents who are like, oh, I really need this one-on-one. I need to continue this. And what are our options? We don't want you necessarily to think that you have to send them on a wild goose chase now to go find someone to consult with. We would be able to offer that option. And what's good for you as a school is that's completely off your plate. You would be able to kind of point them in the direction of CSM to be able to say, you have access to the coaches that we've been working with. And then becomes totally on the parent, right? Becomes their opportunity at that point to pursue that separately. And you don't have to worry about it. So that is yet another option for how you could customize that, is to say, we're going to get you through the door. But if you want to have somebody that kind of sees you personally one-on-one through the finish line, you have that option to pursue that. Okay. So this brings us to the place where we'll always, and I appreciate some questions throughout in the chat, but we always like to open it up at this point to see if there are any questions, if there's anything that you are curious about from the slides that you saw, from the conversations that we've had. Very interested in any questions or comments that you have. Okay.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
We will be providing this later once
Thank you.
we've downloaded it.